Chelsea against Liverpool was always going to be Lampard's first real test for his new-look Chelsea side. Still lacking some of the main players which he would like in his squad, as we can see from their starting lineup. This week, Havertz starting in the middle with Werner out on the left. Mason Mount favoured up front again on the right-hand side. Jorginho, Kante and Kovacic forming a three in midfield. Alonso on the left, Zuma with Christensen on the right side at centre-back, and James on the left. Kepa still in goal. And those players that they're missing, well, Ben Chilwell, Thiago Silva, Pulisic and Ziyech, all four of those players you would imagine would be in a starting lineup in the coming weeks. In the defensive phase, Werner and Mount dropped down into those channels to provide a 4-5-1. In the offensive phase, almost exactly a carbon copy of Liverpool with a 2-3-5 with those fullbacks pushing high up, Werner and Mount finding themselves inside with often Havertz dropping into that false 9 position. Looking at the Liverpool lineup then, that typical 4-3-3 system, the only change in that formation is Fabinho coming in at centre-back. In the defensive phase, Salah and Mane, as we all know, dropped slightly back, carbon copy of that Chelsea team that we just saw, and the offensive phase, exactly the same again, that 2-3-5 with really high pushing fullbacks Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, with Firmino often dropping back into that false 9 position. As we've seen so many times over the last seasons, Liverpool like to press high against goal kicks, forcing the opposite team to try and play out against a high press or to play long. Really high pressing into the opposition half with that high defensive line. So taking a look at that Liverpool press, what exactly are they doing? As we can see, the strikers line up on the edge of the box. Mane and Salah jump into any pass played into a centre-back, with Firmino covering any pivot in there. Should the ball bypass those two centre-forwards, the next role is either Wijnaldum or Keita, the opposite side of midfielders, to jump out. And should those players be beaten, then Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are always ready to jump out really high into the opposition half and try and press any fullback which receives the ball or midfielder dropping into those situations. So now when we put the Chelsea squad in, we can see what will be happening if they do play that ball into one of their centre-backs, Mane and Salah jumping in to provide cover shadows and preventing those players from receiving the ball. Forcing the play inside, should they be beaten again, Wijnaldum dropping into either Kante or James, and then Henderson obviously providing the cover with a switch. With the ball coming onto the other side, this time we can see Salah's moved forward, providing cover shadow against Alonso. Keita has moved forward also onto Kovacic, preventing the ball coming through him. Should the ball come over though into Alonso, Alexander is always ready to jump out high into the opposition half. Here we can see that first example on the left with Mane curving his run to try and prevent the ball coming from the centre-back into James. Wijnaldum, as we can see, either jumping onto Kante or onto James should it come. And on the opposite side, Salah making that curved run, preventing the ball from coming into Alonso. Keita there, as we can see, with Kovacic, and Alexander pressing really high into the opposition half to try and press Alonso should that ball be chipped over to him. Moving on to Chelsea's positional attack against that high pressing Liverpool side. That high defensive line from Liverpool, Chelsea were trying to make the most of and try and play their centre forwards with the speed of Werner and the speed of Mason Mount in behind. So that typical system then from Liverpool, how were they lined up? Well, Havertz dropping into that false 9 position as we already mentioned previously, and Mount and Werner positioning themselves in between centre-back and full-back on either side. Why are they doing that? That's because if the ball comes into one of the full-backs trying to force Alexander-Arnold or Robertson out, then that leaves the space in behind them for these passes from full-back into Werner and be able to get in behind that high Liverpool defence. Here we can see that Chelsea system then, that back four, high full-backs with James and Alonso getting forward, then those three midfield, Jorginho and Kovacic and Kante, and then Havertz dropping back into that false 9 position, also creating a diamond in the midfield, and then those positions of Werner and Mason Mount in between the centre-back and full-backs on either side. Why? As we already said, any pass into a full-back and Alexander jumping out will create that space for Werner to drop in and receive any passing behind that Liverpool line. And that happened on numerous occasions. Here, just in the 3rd minute of the match, ball over from Christensen. First time pass into that space when Alexander jumps out and Werner was in behind that Liverpool line. Again, a little bit later on in the game, this time Alexander drawn towards the ball as Alonso brings it forward. High Liverpool line, spacing behind, ball over the top would have caused them all sorts of problems. Chelsea's mid-block and Liverpool's positional attack. As we mentioned, Mason Mount and Werner dropping in to create that 4-5-1 defensive system. Why were Mount and Werner dropping into these positions? Really simple really. When we put that Liverpool side in and we can see how high those fullbacks Robertson and Alexander are, that's the reason why they were dropping back. Either to jump back onto them or to be able to spring forward and create counter-attacks either side of those Liverpool centre-backs with loads of space either side of them. So here's that system then, that 4-3-2-1 if you like, or 4-5-1. Robertson and Alexander high, and in this situation Mount was able to come forward and press Robertson, and any ball coming across the other side and Werner would be able to make a counter-attack in between that space between Alexander and the centre-backs. Onto the red card which ultimately decided the game. Christensen for me needs to block that from Mane, but also look at the fact that there's no pressure on the ball. Chelsea centre-back there is just flat-footed, Zuma's flat-footed, won't be able to get back into help. Christensen and the whole Chelsea team is just too high when there's no pressure on the ball. You need to be dropping back if there's no pressure on the ball, or get pressure on the ball. They don't, ball comes in, Christensen, as we know, brings down Mane, and it's a red card. So after that red card, what's going to happen then? Obviously they need to make some changes, and changes Liverpool did make. Liverpool took the initiative and brought on Thiago in the middle of the pitch. And Thiago dominated the match, as we'll see. Chelsea also had to make a substitution, Tomori coming on into the centre-back position and creating a 4-5-1. And Thiago there in the middle of that diamond between Keita, Wijnaldum and Firmino when he would drop back, just dominating the play, making passes all around, made 83 passes in 45 minutes, which is more than any other debut player since Opta began collecting statistics, which is incredible. 12 long passes during the game, more than any other player, and he just sat in that middle of the pitch and just dictated the play. His play led to the first goal, switching the ball over onto that right hand side, a little 1-2 on the edge of the box, and they were able to put the ball across into Mane to finish. And then the second goal was a mistake from Kepa, awful mistake. All he needed to do is play it into Zuma. Having said that, Zuma isn't exactly body position ready to be able to receive that ball, and he just plays it straight into Sadio Mane. In conclusion then, well, let's be honest, Chelsea, they need reinforcements desperately. They need Pulisic back in the side, they need Thiago Silva to make his debut and really solidify that defensive spot for Chelsea, and Chilwell will also provide much needed support on the left instead of Marcos Alonso. Liverpool, well, let's be honest, Liverpool are just relentless as they go marching on. They're too strong in midfield and they've only gone and strengthened by bringing in Thiago. Liverpool are going to be a really hard outfit to beat this season.